Marlon Parisian had always been the man who made hearts slow down with just a smile. He had that perfect mix of charm and calm, the kind that made you forget every worry when he was near. Before the accident, before everything spun into something neither of us could control, I thought he was my forever. We were 6 months from the altar when his motorcycle met a steel truck on a slick December night. The doctors said it was a miracle he survived, but they also said he'd never walk again. Just like that, our lives cracked like thin glass. Jacqueline shown me was suddenly engaged to a man who couldn't climb stairs, couldn't dance with me, couldn't stand by me in the ways I had dreamed. But I stayed. I dropped every plan, turned my art studio into a hospital room, bathed him, fed him, pushed him through physical therapy when even the nurses gave up. I sat with him through pain so sharp it made him scream in the middle of the night. I wiped those tears too, and I loved him through all of it. It wasn't charity. It wasn't guilt. It was love, raw and heavy and real. Every part of me believed that even if he never stood again, we'd find our way, that we'd build something different, but beautiful all the same. I thought the accident would be a chapter in our story, not the end of it. But people change when they lose everything, and then change again when they start to get it back. Marlon started regaining feeling in his legs 3 months before the wedding. At first, it was a flutter in his toes. Then came the tingling in his calves, and slowly, with endless therapy, the ability to stand. I was there for all of it, cheering louder than anyone. He said he loved me. He said he couldn't have done it without me. And I believed every word, because I needed to. Then Tanya Corwin reappeared. She was a ghost from Marlon's past, his college flame, the one who broke his heart before I ever knew it was bruised. Gorgeous, always polished, with eyes that smiled in that fake way only rich women could pull off. She visited once, claiming it was just to check in after hearing about his recovery. But then she stayed for coffee, then dinner, then she started showing up at his therapy sessions like she belonged there. T first, I said nothing. I trusted him, or at least wanted to. But things changed. The way he spoke to me shifted. There were fewer thank yous, fewer smiles, more silence. He flinched when I tried to help him dress. He started doing things on his own. But instead of pride, his independence came with coldness. Like my presence reminded him of his weakness. Like I was a chapter he needed to close now that he could walk again. A week before our wedding, he called me into the living room. No lights, just the gray of dusk bleeding through the windows. He stood without the walker, without help, and looked at me with eyes I didn't recognize. I'm calling it off, he said. I blinked. Calling what off? The wedding. There was no emotion in his voice, just finality. He didn't explain, didn't cry, didn't apologize, just stood there like I hadn't held him while he vomited into buckets or pushed his wheelchair through crowded streets just so he could feel alive. I didn't beg. I didn't scream. I walked away, but not empty-handed. Weeks later, his lawyer called. He wanted a clean break. No scandal, no press. Marlon was becoming a public figure now. Tanya was helping him get into politics, apparently, and I had years of photos, videos, medical records that proved I'd been his caretaker, his fiancée, and his unpaid nurse. He offered a settlement. I took it. People say compensation can't buy closure, but money lets you build something new. I bought a condo with floor-to-ceiling windows and started painting again. I traveled. I healed. But nothing quite prepares you for running into the man who left you, especially when he walks across the room with no limp and his new fiancée on his arm, smiling like the past never happened. He spotted me before I could turn away. His eyes flicked across the room and landed on mine. And for a split second, something in his expression stuttered, maybe guilt, maybe surprise, but it vanished just as quickly. Tanya was laughing at something beside him, holding his hand like it was her property. Her diamond ring could have blinded a blind man. We were at an art gala, one I had been invited to because my newest collection, ironically titled "Unseen Scars," had finally gotten the attention of some serious critics. I was wearing a black silk dress that hugged my body like it knew my pain, and I looked good, not just because I wanted to, but because healing sometimes comes in stilettos and lipstick. Marlon made his way toward me. Tanya stayed behind, fake laughing, with some gallery investor, probably assuming I was just another face in the crowd. But Marlon knew better. His pace was too casual, too rehearsed. "Jacqueline," he said, standing in front of me like the last time we spoke hadn't ended in a funeral for our future. "Marlon," I answered, careful to keep my tone flat. I was proud of that. He looked me over, his mouth twitching like he wanted to say something nice, something nostalgic, but found nothing. His silence was louder than the piano music echoing in the gallery. You look well, he finally said. I am well, I replied, chin high. He scratched the back of his neck, a nervous tick I used to find endearing. Now it just reminded me of how easy it was for him to drop me like expired medicine. I didn't expect to see you here, he added. I'm one of the featured artists. His face flickered. You're painting again? I nodded. I never stopped. You just stopped noticing. That one landed. He winced, just a little, before stuffing his hands into the pockets of his tailored navy suit. I heard about the settlement, he said after a pause, lowering his voice. I wanted to make sure you were taken care of. I was never your responsibility, I snapped, surprising even myself. You weren't taking care of me. You were cleaning up your image. I wasn't trying to hurt you. No, you were just done needing me. He blinked, stunned by how calmly the words rolled out of me. But I wasn't angry, not anymore. I was past anger. This was clarity, the kind that comes after every lie has been stripped down to its bones. I just thought maybe we could talk, he said, quieter now. You know properly. What for? I asked. So you can explain how dumping the woman who fed you and bathed you was somehow noble. So you can tell me how Tanya is different now and you two are magically meant to be? I'm good, Marlon. I'm really good. Before he could respond, Caden Bechteler stepped beside me, tall, with warm brown eyes and a voice like velvet when he leaned in and said, Is this guy bothering you, Jacqueline? Marlon flinched. I smiled. Caden had been part of my world for about 2 months. Not a lover, not yet, but something steady, safe. He was an architect, smart and subtle, and he respected silence more than most. He reached for my glass and gently switched it with his full one, without needing to ask. This is Marlon, I said simply. An old acquaintance. Caden nodded slowly, giving Marlon the kind of long, silent look that men use when they know everything without needing to say a word. Marlon looked like he wanted to sink through the floor. Well, Marlon said, clearing his throat, I should get back. I didn't respond. He walked away. As he rejoined Tanya, who was still sipping champagne like she hadn't just lost the unspoken war. Caden leaned close. Was that the ex? I nodded. Do I need to accidentally knock over a wine bottle on his $1,000 shoes? I laughed, and it was real. The first one in a long time, because walking away had cost me tears, years, and pieces of myself I thought I'd never get back. But watching Marlon walk towards someone else, someone who only saw his strength and never his weakness, made me realize something. He didn't reject me because I was too much. He rejected me because he couldn't handle how deeply I had loved him when he was at his lowest. Later that night, after the crowd thinned and the jazz quartet started packing up their instruments, I stood by the window with a glass of red wine and the city lights spilling across my shoulders. Caden had gone to pull the car around, and I had a moment alone to breathe, to really feel everything. Seeing Marlon again hadn't broken me. It hadn't even bent me. And that realization stirred something deep inside. Not triumph, not revenge, just peace. But peace is a funny thing. It doesn't last long when your past refuses to stay buried. The next morning, I woke up to an email. Subject line, a small request. No sender name. But I knew who it was before I clicked. It was from Marlon. Jacqueline, I know I don't deserve your time, but I'm asking for it anyway. Please meet me. 1 hour. 1 coffee. No drama. Just something I need to say, and I'd rather say it face to face. I won't contact you again if you say no. Marlene stared at the screen for a long time, then closed it, then opened it again. I didn't owe him anything, but curiosity is its own form of poison. So I said yes. We met at a quiet cafe tucked in the edge of town, one I hadn't been to since the early days of our relationship. It was the same place where he first told me he wanted to marry me. Same cracked leather boots, same scent of burnt espresso and cinnamon scones. He was already seated when I arrived, looking too polished for a man who once sobbed in my arms while begging me not to give up on him. His suit was wrinkle-free, his shoes shined, but his eyes, they looked tired, hollow. I sat across from him, arms folded. He offered a smile. I didn't return it. Thanks for coming, he said. I said nothing. Let the silence hang. I've been thinking a lot about what happened, he went on. About what I did. I wanted to explain, not for forgiveness, just honesty. That's rich. I said flatly. You walked out without explanation. Now you want closure? He winced. You're right. I was a coward. I used the recovery as a shield. Told myself I needed to find myself again. But really, I was afraid. Of me? He looked up, straight into my eyes. Of how much I owed you, he said. The words hit me in the gut. I wasn't expecting him to say that. Not Marlon. Not the man who once tried to convince me he didn't need help, even when he was crying. Through the pain, I started walking again, and suddenly I had this illusion that I was getting my life back. And that life before the accident didn't include being cared for, being vulnerable. I didn't want to be seen as broken. I leaned back. So you dumped the woman who saw you at your worst and stayed anyway? Yes, he admitted, voice low. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I didn't think I deserved the kind of love you gave me. Silence stretched between us like a wire pulled too tight. And Tanya? I finally asked. She's safe. She knew me before I was ever weak. She never saw me fall, so she can't remind me of it. That sentence was his truth. Ugly, honest, and cowardly. So what's this coffee for? I asked. You're not asking for me back, are you? He shook his head. No, I know that. Chapter's over. I just wanted to tell you that I never forgot what you did, that I think about it more than I want to, and that you deserved a hell of a lot more than what I gave you. I stared at him. He looked like he expected something, maybe pity, maybe a flicker of softness, but I wasn't that woman anymore. I know what I deserved, I said. And you couldn't give it. I stood up, placed a 20 on the table, and looked down at the man who once had my whole heart. I hope you find peace, Marlon, but you'll have to do it without me. I walked out of that cafe with no weight on my shoulders, no pain, just clarity. Because some goodbyes aren't sad. Some are long overdue. Weeks passed. Life went on, as it does. The gallery offered me another exhibition slot, this time in Berlin. I said yes without blinking. My paintings were finally speaking for themselves, raw, jagged pieces of emotion scraped across canvas in colors I couldn't name but could feel. Critics called it fierce vulnerability. I called it therapy with a paintbrush. Caden, meanwhile, became a fixture in my world. We didn't label things. There were no urgent declarations of love, no whispered promises in the dark, just quiet. Dinners, shared silences, and hands that held without needing to own. He was gentle in a way I hadn't realized I needed. No fireworks, just warmth that stayed. But even with my life reshaping itself beautifully, something kept tugging at the edges of my mind. A name, a voice, a woman, Tanya. I hadn't thought much of her until one afternoon when my phone buzzed with a call from a blocked number. I ignored it. Then it rang again, and again. Curiosity cracked me. I answered on the fourth try, already annoyed. Jacqueline Schoen? The voice asked. Crisp, icy. Yes, this is Tanya Corwin. I laughed out loud before I could stop myself. You're kidding? I'm not. I know this is strange, but I need to speak with you, privately. I sat down, suddenly intrigued. You expect me to meet with you after everything? I'm not calling as Marlon's fiancé. I'm calling as someone who's realizing things. The pause stretched. Then she added, please, just one conversation. Against better judgment, or maybe because my life had gotten too peaceful, I agreed. Curiosity was a habit I hadn't fully broken. We met at a rooftop lounge downtown. The kind of place Tanya belonged in, with glass walls, ambient jazz, and waiters who probably judged your shoes. She wore a cream pantsuit, hair twisted into some chic knot, lips painted blood red. Still perfect. She didn't look smug this time. She looked tired, a little undone around the edges. Thank you for coming, she said, sliding a glass of wine toward me. I didn't touch it. Let's skip the formalities, I replied. Why am I here? She hesitated, then said, I think he's using me. I blinked. Excuse me? Marlon, she said. He's different, cold, distant. I thought it was stress, the campaign, public life, but it's more than that. He's paranoid, controlling. He checks my phone, monitors where I go. I'm beginning to think I was part of a strategy. I tilted my head. You mean you might have been the compensation he needed after dumping me? Tanya flinched. I didn't come here to fight. I came because I think you know who he really is. And I need to know if what I'm feeling is valid or if I'm just losing your mind. She nodded. I sipped the wine now, slowly, letting the silence sting her a little. You ever wonder why he was so eager to walk away from me once he stood again? I asked. Why he cut Ti's clean and fast like a man escaping something burning. She didn't answer. Because when you've seen a man's worst, I said, leaning forward, he either becomes grateful or ashamed. And shame, that one turns to resentment real quick. He didn't want to be reminded of the days I wiped his vomit off the floor, or held his broken body while he screamed at night. Tanya, you're the clean slate. You never saw him powerless. And he needs that. Her hands clenched in her lap. I thought I had everything, she whispered. Now I'm scared to be alone with him sometimes. He hasn't hit me, not yet, but his words. I finished her sentence in my head. Cut deeper than fists ever could. You should leave, I said simply. I can't, not yet. He'd ruin me publicly. My firm, my name, my career. He has dirt. He made sure of it. Of course he did. Marlon wasn't just rebuilding his life. He was rewriting it. And anyone who knew the previous drafts. We were threats. I stood up. You're not crazy, Tanya, I said. But you are in over your head. And you're not the first. I hope to God you're the last. She reached out, almost desperate. Can we stay in touch? I stared at her. The woman who once took what I loved without blinking, now unraveling in front of me. I'll think about it, I said, walking away. As I stepped back into the evening air, something settled in my chest. This wasn't just my story anymore. Marlon was still writing his, still dragging people into his mess. But I was out of the book now, free. A week after that rooftop meeting, I received a letter, not an email, not a text, a physical letter, delivered in a cream envelope with my name handwritten in blue ink, elegant, clean, unsettling. No return address, no stamp. Inside a single sheet. Jacqueline, if anything happens to me, it won't be an accident. He knows I spoke to you. He's been asking strange questions, watching me too closely. I don't know what he's capable of anymore. Please don't ignore this. I don't know who else to trust. Tanya read it 3 times, each word getting colder, heavier, pressing down like ice on my spine. Tanya's handwriting was shaky. She had always prided herself on control, on composure. This wasn't the tone of a woman crying wolf. This was someone finally seeing the wolf for what he was. I wanted to toss the letter away, to let her deal with her own mistake. She picked him. She climbed into that cage. But then I thought of myself in her place 5 years ago, when I first met Marlon and saw nothing but light. Before the accident, before, the bruises weren't physical, but just as deep. I couldn't look away. So I called Caden. He was quiet on the phone, as he always was when something serious settled between us. Then he asked, you think she's in danger? I think she's already neck deep. Caden sighed. I know a guy, private investigator, quiet, discreet. Want me to make the call? Please. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Tanya's face, painted and polished, but underneath brittle. Afraid? She had walked into a storm, thinking it was champagne. Caden's contact, a retired cop named Briggs, agreed to take the case. Surveillance? Background? Anything we needed. I paid half upfront. Tanya paid nothing. I didn't tell her we had eyes on Marlon. She'd never trust it. 2 days later, Briggs called me with a voice that was no longer casual. You're not going to like what I found. Try me. He's been meeting with someone. A lawyer. But not for campaign stuff. Real estate. Offshore accounts. Signed papers that would move certain assets out of Tanya's name and into a trust. One she doesn't know about. If she disappears or walks away, she gets nothing. Not even her car. I felt my throat tighten. He's planning to dump her? Maybe worse. This guy's careful. Everything's clean on paper, but the timing's weird. He's got a new property outside the city, bought in cash, isolated. It sounded like a setup, a place you take someone when you don't want them found. I met Tanya again, this time at my place. She looked worse, hollow eyes, fingers shaking around her purse strap. He changed the locks on our condo, she said. Before I could even greet her, said it was for security. He's traveling more, always evasive. I'm scared, Jacqueline. I don't even know what for exactly, but it's there. I handed her the letter she'd written me. She froze. Where did you find this? She asked. It was left at my door. I didn't write this. Her voice trembled as she said it. Her hands gripped the page, then let it fall onto the table like it burned her. I never sent this. I thought about it. I drafted something, but I never mailed it. I tore it up. I stared at her. She stared at me. Neither of us said what we were both thinking. He wanted us to meet, to panic, to scramble. And maybe he wanted to see which one of us would snap first. This wasn't a man trying to bury his past. This was a man staging a performance, one where we played the parts, and he pulled the strings. And in that moment, Tanya finally understood what I had years ago. Marlon Persian didn't just walk again. He rose and turned into something else entirely. That night, Tanya stayed over, not because we were friends now, not because everything was forgiven, but because fear doesn't care about old grudges. She curled up on my couch while I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, counting all the ways Marlon had changed shape since the accident, how he'd gone from broken to manipulative, from victim to threat. And the scariest part, he wore it all with that same charming smile that once convinced me I was safe. At T3:14 a.m., Tanya screamed. I bolted upright, heart pounding. She was standing in the hallway, hands clamped over her mouth, eyes wide, and wet. My phone, she whispered. Look at this. She handed it to me, hands shaking so hard she nearly dropped it. The screen was lit up with a notification. An AirTag tracker had been detected moving with her. Unknown device. Alert sent only minutes ago. He's tracking me, she said. He must have planted it in my bag. Or my car. I didn't even think. I went cold. I took her phone, disabled the tracking, and powered it off. We checked her purse. Sewn into the lining, tucked into a hidden zipper, was a small white tracker no bigger than a coin. He knew where she was. He probably knew she was here. This is escalation, Caden said the next morning when he came over. He's not just keeping tabs, he's warning her. Tanya couldn't even argue. She just nodded, face pale, lips trembling. What do I do? I looked at Caden, then at her. You disappear, I said. Today. We arranged it fast. I called a friend upstate with an empty cabin. No internet, no cameras, no eyes. Caden drove her in his car. I gave her cash, a burner phone, and a list of instructions. No calls, no cards, no mistakes. Before she left, Tanya hugged me. It was stiff, awkward, but it was real. I didn't understand you back then, she said, but I do now. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. A day later, the media exploded. Breaking: Marlon Persian's fiancé vanishes, foul play suspected. Photos of Tanya. Statements from his campaign. Devastated by her disappearance, fully cooperating with authorities. A private struggle with mental health, they hinted. He played the grieving man perfectly. He held a press conference, cried on camera, said she left a note, that he feared she was unstable. He begged the public to come forward with information. I watched it all from my couch, disgust twisting in my gut. But what chilled me wasn't the act. It was how believable he made it look. He even showed reporters the fake note. I knew it was fake. Tanya would never use words like that. I'm lost. It's all too much. No, that wasn't her. That was Marlon scripting her last scene. He wanted her to disappear. And now the world believes she did it willingly. And the worst part, he'd done this before, not in the same way. But I started looking deeper, calling people from his past, old classmates, colleagues. A pattern emerged: women who got too close and then left quietly, always with some convenient scandal or issue pinned to them. A therapist from his college years, who suddenly left the state after accusing him of boundary violations. An ex-assistant who took a payout to stay quiet after filing a harassment complaint that never saw court. And of course, me, the one who got compensation to vanish without noise. But Tanya was different. She didn't vanish. She was hidden. And I was the only one who knew the truth. So I made a decision. If Marlon wanted to write scripts for the women he discarded, then it was time someone else told the real story. I pulled out my laptop, opened a blank document, and began typing. Not a painting, not a letter, not another private message into the void. This was going to be public, and when I was done, he wouldn't be able to walk his way out of it. I called the piece "The Man Who Walked Again and What He Crushed Beneath His Feet." It started as a personal essay, just a few pages. My truth, unvarnished, unfiltered. I didn't name Tanya. I didn't need to. I only wrote about what I had lived, what I had seen, the man I had nursed back to life, only for him to cut me out of it the second he could stand again. The subtle cruelty, the erasure, the way he replaced love with control. I recounted everything: the night he called off the wedding, with dead eyes, the hush money settlement, the cold silence that followed. I told the world about how a man can hide behind charm and perfect posture and still bleed you dry without ever raising his voice. First, I just posted it on my private blog, a space I barely used anymore, but someone shared it. Then someone else. It got picked up by a mid-tier online magazine. Within 48 hours, it went viral. The timing helped. The media was still buzzing about Tanya's disappearance. They framed my story as the ex-Yankee who may hold the key to unraveling Marlon Parisian's perfect image, and suddenly, the narrative started to shift. People began asking harder questions. Investigative podcasts picked it up. Hashtags trended. Old videos of Marlon's campaign speeches were dissected, replayed, re-examined. His crying interview suddenly looked rehearsed under a new lens. And then came the anonymous tips. A former intern messaged me, sharing audio recordings of conversations where Marlon spoke about cutting dead weight and managing optics. A journalist leaked emails between Marlon and a PR consultant from months ago discussing how to shape a narrative if the Corwin girl spirals. That was the phrase, the Corwin girl. He hadn't even been thinking of her as a person. Caden stayed close through it all. Protective, steady. He made sure I wasn't alone, especially when the threats started. Anonymous texts, a cracked window, a car following me for 3 blocks before speeding off. All the classic moves of someone trying to intimidate without leaving fingerprints. But it wasn't working anymore, because I wasn't that woman who once waited on a man to stand up and love her again. I was standing now, and I wasn't afraid of being seen. Then came the knock, late evening, a Tuesday. Tanya, disheveled, hood up, eyes wild. She'd left the cabin, driven all night. I couldn't stay hidden anymore, she said. It's worse. Then I thought, she was holding a flash drive. What is it? I asked. Proof, she whispered. Proof he planned it all. She had found it by accident. She said there was a folder on his laptop, poorly hidden, encrypted. But she'd copied everything before fleeing. It included contracts, plans, even video footage of Marlon practicing his press statement before Tanya had even gone missing. He knew exactly what he'd say, down to the tearful pause. The video made my skin crawl. She hit play, and we watched him rehearse fake emotion. Over and over, adjusting his tie, changing how he said her name, pacing, smiling slightly, then catching himself. It was all theater, every second of it. We handed the flash drive over to Briggs, the PI, who passed it to a journalist already sniffing around the cracks in Marlon's perfect story. Within hours, a new article hit the web. The disappearance of Tanya Corwin, a manufactured tragedy. His house of cards started collapsing in real time. Marlon responded publicly the next day, frantic, angry, deflecting. But now the press had teeth. The footage was damning. The narrative flipped fast from grieving fianc to manipulative fraud. And then the police opened a formal investigation. He was no longer the man who had recovered. He was the man who had something to hide. The last time I saw him, he was being escorted out of a campaign event by 2 plainclothes officers, surrounded by flashing cameras and reporters screaming questions. His eyes locked onto mine for 1 second before he was shoved into the back seat of a waiting black car. He looked more like the broken man I once knew. But this time, there was no accident. He broke himself. It took weeks for the case to unfold fully. Charges were filed not for Tanya's disappearance, since she was very much alive, but for conspiracy to commit fraud, evidence tampering, and a long, ugly list of campaign finance violations. The truth is, people like Marlon Parisian don't go down for emotional abuse or manipulation. That's too gray for courts, too invisible. But money? Lies on paper? Those leave footprints. Tanya stayed quiet publicly. She didn't want the spotlight. She wanted to vanish from it all. We talked a few more times, cautious, respectful conversations. No apologies necessary anymore. We had both been in the same storm, just on different decks of the same sinking ship. She left the country after the indictment. New name, new passport. Somewhere warm, I think. I didn't ask. Some people don't want rescue, they just want to escape. Emmy. I stayed. My story had gone global by then. Women wrote to me from every part of the world. Women who had been erased, who had loved broken men only to be blamed for their healing. Women who held up the weight of someone else's weakness until their backs snapped. Some of them thanked me. Others shared their stories. But they all echoed the same truth. Sometimes the person you love most is the one who will punish you for witnessing their worst. The art world exploded around me in the best way. Suddenly, galleries wanted my voice, not just my brushstrokes. People stood in front of my canvases with tears in their eyes, not because of the colors, but because they recognized the pain underneath. One painting titled "He Stood Without Me" was acquired by a national museum. It was just a silhouette of a man walking into the light, with a woman's shadow on the ground behind him, holding his pieces. Critics called it haunting. I called it truth. And Caden, he stayed too. Not in a savior kind of way, not as a rebound or a crutch. He stayed because he wanted to, because he saw all the messy, cracked parts of me and never once asked me to quiet them. He didn't need me to be whole, and I didn't need him to be a shield. One evening, we sat on the balcony of my apartment, watching the skyline hum with life, and he asked, "Do you ever think about how different things would have been if Marlon hadn't gotten into that accident?" I turned my wine glass slowly, letting the thought settle. "I think about it all the time," I said, "but not because I miss him. I think about how lucky I am that I saw who he really was before I married him." He nodded. "I think he thought walking again would make him whole." "It didn't," I said softly. "It just gave him legs to run from everything broken inside him." Caden didn't say anything after that. He didn't need to, because closure isn't always a dramatic ending. Sometimes it's just peace, not silence, not forgetting, just the kind of quiet that no longer hurts. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need apologies. I had the truth, and I walked away with something Marlon never could buy back: myself.